Admiral Zexathara stood on the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought, Eternal Glory. His 6 eyes focused on the holographic display before him. The massive warship, nearly 3 kilometers long, represented the pinnacle of Caltharian engineering and had never faced a serious threat in its 20-year service record. Today, however, something was different. "Admiral!" called Communications Officer Veltar from her station, her voice carrying an unusual tremor. "We're receiving priority alerts from the Outer Rim colonies. Multiple reports of an unknown vessel." Zexathara's primary eyes narrowed while his auxiliary eyes continued monitoring the bridge. The Caltharian Empire had ruled this sector of space for over 400 years. Unknown vessels were rare, and usually belonged to some primitive species that had just discovered faster-than-light travel. Such encounters typically ended with either diplomatic annexation or swift conquest. "Display the reports," he commanded, his deep voice echoing through the bridge's crystalline walls. The main hologram shifted, showing a compilation of surveillance footage from various border stations. At first, Zexathara saw nothing unusual, just the typical cosmic debris and occasional merchant vessel. Then the image focused on something that made his mandibles click nervously. It was a ship, but unlike anything in the Imperial database. Where Caltharian vessels were elegant and flowing, with graceful curves that spoke of artistic sensibility, this craft appeared brutally functional. Its hull was a dark gray, almost black, with angular lines and what appeared to be heavy armor plating. Strange protrusions jutted from its surface at seemingly random intervals. "Analysis?" Zexathara demanded. Science Officer Mordan manipulated his console with practiced efficiency. "Length approximately 800 meters, Admiral. Mass readings are unusual. The ship appears significantly denser than our vessels of comparable size. Hull composition unknown. Our sensors are having difficulty penetrating the surface layer." "Weapon signatures?" "That's where it gets interesting, sir." Mordan's voice carried a note of puzzlement. "We're detecting multiple energy signatures that don't match anything in our database. The power output readings are inconsistent. Sometimes they spike to levels that should be impossible for a vessel that size." Zexathara studied the image more carefully. The ship's design philosophy was completely alien to Imperial sensibilities. Every line spoke of violence and conflict. Even their most aggressive warship designs maintained some aesthetic beauty. This vessel looked like it had been built for one purpose only: destroying other ships. "Have we attempted communication?" he asked. "Yes, Admiral," Veltar replied. "We've broadcast on all standard frequencies in 17 different languages. No response." "Movement pattern?" "The vessel is maintaining a steady course through the Kepler Nebula system. Speed is well within normal parameters, but—" Mordan hesitated. "Speak freely." "Officer, the ship's trajectory takes it directly past 3 of our forward observation posts. It's almost as if it's deliberately choosing a path that will bring it into contact with our forces." Zexathara felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. In his experience, unknown vessels that actively sought contact with the Imperial Navy were either extremely foolish or extremely dangerous. Given the ship's menacing appearance, he suspected it wasn't the former. "Alert status?" he inquired. "Admiral Kethvar has already dispatched the Silver Talon and Void Striker to intercept," reported his tactical officer. "Both ships are maintaining safe distance and attempting peaceful contact." The mention of Admiral Kethvar gave Zexathara some comfort. The veteran commander had 40 years of experience dealing with first-contact situations. If anyone could handle this diplomatically, it was him. Hours passed. Zexathara remained on the bridge, monitoring communications from the intercept fleet. Reports came in regularly. The unknown vessel continued its course, ignoring all attempts at communication, but showing no hostile intent. The two Imperial cruisers maintained their escort positions, ready to act if needed. Then everything changed. "Admiral!" Veltar's voice cracked with alarm. "Priority transmission from Admiral Kethvar. He's requesting immediate reinforcement and he sounds scared." Zexathara had known Kethvar for decades. The man didn't know the meaning of fear. "Put him through!" The hologram flickered, revealing Kethvar's weathered features. His usually calm expression showed clear signs of stress. "Zexathara, thank the ancestors you're monitoring. We have a problem. A big problem." "Report, Admiral. This ship, whatever it is, it just demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't exist. We were maintaining standard observation distance when it suddenly altered course. Not gradually, instantly. One moment it was heading toward the Kepler station, the next it was moving directly toward us. No transition, no acceleration curve. It simply changed direction like gravity doesn't apply to it." Zexathara felt his confidence wavering. "Impossible. All ships require transition time to change course at those velocities." "That's what I thought too. Then it did something else." Kethvar looked directly into the camera. It fired a warning shot. Not at us, mind you, but past our bow. The energy beam was unlike anything I've ever seen. It didn't dissipate over distance like our weapons. The beam maintained perfect coherence for over 200 kilometers before striking an asteroid. The asteroid didn't just get destroyed, Zexathara, it got vaporized. Completely. Not even dust remained. The bridge fell silent. Zexathara's tactical mind raced through the implications. Imperial weapons were among the most advanced in known space. Even their most powerful ship killers couldn't achieve that level of destruction at such range. "Have you identified the species?" Zexathara asked. "That's where it gets worse. We managed to get a closer scan when they demonstrated their weapons. The ship isn't just unknown. It's impossible. The power generation systems appear to be based on some form of controlled fusion, but the efficiency ratings are off our charts. The hull isn't just armored. It's some kind of reactive material that seems to adapt to different types of incoming energy. And the crew— What about the crew? From what our bioscanners can detect, they're bipedal, carbon-based, roughly 2 meters tall. But here's the thing, they're completely unknown. Not in any database, not related to any known species. It's like they appeared from nowhere. Zexathara considered this information. In the Empire's long history, they had encountered hundreds of species. Some had been peaceful and joined willingly. Others had resisted and been conquered. But all had fit into understood patterns of development and technology. This ship represented something completely outside their experience. "Orders, Admiral?" Kethvar asked. "Maintain distance. Continue attempting communication, but do not, under any circumstances, take aggressive action. If they demonstrate hostile intent, retreat immediately and report." "Understood. But Zexathara, there's one more thing. We intercepted a brief data transmission from their ship. Our linguists are working on it, but initial analysis suggests it might be a language designation. The transmission contained what appeared to be a single word repeated several times. Which was? Human. They kept transmitting the word human on various frequencies. After ending the communication, Zexathara stood motionless for several minutes. His officers exchanged worried glances but remained silent. Finally, he turned to his intelligence officer. "Lieutenant Bexlar, I want you to conduct a comprehensive database search. Look for any reference to the term human in our historical records, first contact reports, ancient archives, everything." "Yes, Admiral. What parameters should I use?" "All of them. Check trading records, scientific surveys, archaeological findings. If this word appears anywhere in our databases, I want to know about it." As the hours passed, Zexathara found himself pacing the bridge, something he hadn't done since his early days as a junior officer. The reports from the intercept fleet continued to arrive, each one more disturbing than the last. The unknown vessel, the human ship, continued to demonstrate capabilities that challenged everything the Empire understood about physics and engineering. It maneuvered through asteroid fields without slowing down, its navigation systems apparently tracking thousands of objects simultaneously. When it passed close to one of their deep space sensors, the device registered energy readings that briefly spiked beyond measurement capability before returning to normal, as if the ship was somehow containing forces that should have torn it apart. Most unsettling was its apparent awareness of Imperial movements. Every time Admiral Kethvar repositioned his ships, the human vessel adjusted its own course slightly, maintaining what seemed to be an optimal tactical position. It wasn't threatening, but it clearly demonstrated that whoever was aboard understood space combat doctrine better than they had any right to. "Admiral," Lieutenant Bexelar called out, breaking through Zexathara's troubled thoughts. "I've found something. It's old. Very old, but there are references to humans in our databases." Zexathara hurried to the intelligence station. "Show me." The holographic display shifted to show ancient text files, their data format so old that the translation systems struggled to process them correctly. These records date back over 600 years, to the early expansion period. They appear to be fragmentary reports from long-range exploration vessels. What do they say? "Most of the data is corrupted, but I can make out references to a species called humans from a system designated as Sol 3. The reports describe them as technologically primitive, but..." Bexelar paused, rereading the ancient text. "But remarkably aggressive and adaptable. There's a notation here that's partially damaged, something about recommend avoiding direct contact until further study possible." "Anything else?" "There's a reference to a diplomatic incident. Apparently, an Imperial survey team made contact with humans, and the details are unclear, but the outcome was described as unfortunate. The records indicate that contact was suspended indefinitely, and the system was marked as off-limits for future expansion." Zexathara stared at the ancient records. 600 years ago, the Empire had been smaller but arguably more militaristic. For them to mark any system as off-limits suggested either incredible strategic value or incredible danger. Given what they were seeing now, he suspected it was the latter. "Sir," called his communications officer, "Admiral Kethvar is requesting another conference. He says it's urgent." When Kethvar's image appeared again, he looked even more shaken than before. "Zexathara, the situation has escalated. The human vessel has been joined by others." "Others?" "3 more ships just dropped out of hyperspace. Different designs, but clearly from the same species. And Zexathara, they're bigger, much bigger. The largest is easily twice the size of the first ship, and the sensor readings we're getting are frankly terrifying." Zexathara felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. "How many ships total?" 4 confirmed, but our long-range sensors are detecting additional hyperspace signatures. More could be coming. The lead ship, the original one, has finally responded to our communications." "What did they say?" "They identified themselves as representatives of something called the United Earth Colonial Navy and requested permission to pass through what they termed Caltharian space. But here's the thing. They knew our species name. They knew our political structure. They had detailed information about our patrol routes and defensive positions." The implications hit Zexathara like a physical blow. The humans had been studying them. For how long? And more importantly, why? "Did you grant permission for passage?" "I stalled for time, said I needed to consult with higher command. But Zexathara, these aren't primitive explorers stumbling into our territory. They're a coordinated military force with intelligence about our operations. This feels like the beginning of something much bigger than a first contact scenario." As if summoned by his fears, the ship's alert klaxons began blaring. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in harsh red illumination as the tactical officer called out, "Admiral, Multiple hyperspace signatures detected across the sector. Massive ones. We're reading at least 20 incoming vessels, possibly more. Zexthera looked at the tactical display as hostile markers began appearing throughout Imperial space. Each one represented a ship that shouldn't exist, crewed by beings that had supposedly been written off centuries ago. The Empire, which had known only victory for 400 years, suddenly found itself facing the unknown. "Signal Fleet Command," he ordered, his voice steady despite his growing fear. "Priority Alpha Alert. Unknown hostile force of significant size has entered Imperial territory. Request immediate deployment of all available assets." As his officers scrambled to carry out orders, Zexthera stared at the tactical display. The human ships weren't attacking, weren't even acting aggressively. They were simply there, positioned throughout Imperial space like pieces on a game board. The message was clear. They could go anywhere they wanted, anytime they wanted. High Command Citadel buzzed with activity unlike anything seen in living memory. Grand Admiral Thex Moran, Supreme Commander of the Caltharian Imperial Navy, stood before a massive holographic tactical display showing the current positions of human vessels throughout their territory. Each red marker represented a potential threat, and there were now over 50 of them scattered across 12 star systems. "Report," he commanded to the assembled staff officers, his four arms gesturing impatiently. Fleet Intelligence Director Quental stepped forward, her usually pristine uniform wrinkled from hours of non-stop analysis. "Grand Admiral, we've been studying the human ships for 72 hours now. What we've discovered is deeply concerning." Continue. "Their technology appears to be based on entirely different scientific principles than ours. Where we use antimatter containment and plasma fusion, they seem to employ something our scientists are calling controlled gravitational manipulation. They're not just moving through space, they're bending space around themselves." The Grand Admiral's secondary eyes focused on the intelligence briefing, while his primary eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. "Explain how this is possible." "We don't know. Our best theoretical physicists have been working around the clock, but the energy requirements for what we're observing should be impossible. The smallest human vessel is generating power levels comparable to our largest dreadnoughts. The bigger ships..." She paused, checking her datapad. "The bigger ships are producing energy signatures that exceed anything in our arsenal." Director of Fleet Operations, Keelmore, cleared his throat. "Grand Admiral, we've attempted to probe their defensive capabilities. 3 of our most advanced stealth reconnaissance drones were deployed to gather detailed scans. Results? All 3 were detected and disabled within minutes. Not destroyed, disabled. The humans somehow neutralized our electronics from a distance, then transmitted the drones back to our ships with their data cores completely wiped. It was almost like they were making a point." Grand Admiral Thex Moran felt a growing unease. In his 50 years of military service, he had never encountered a situation where the Empire wasn't clearly superior in either technology or numbers. The humans seemed to have advantages in both areas. "What about their numbers?" he asked. Quental consulted another datapad. "That's perhaps the most disturbing aspect. Our deep space monitoring stations have recorded over 300 hyperspace signatures in the past day alone. Not all of them have materialized into visible ships, but the pattern suggests a massive fleet movement." 300? The Grand Admiral's mandibles clicked nervously. The entire Imperial Navy consists of fewer than 200 capital ships. "Yes, sir. And based on the energy signatures we're detecting, many of the human vessels appear to be significantly more powerful than our capital ships. We may be facing a force that outnumbers us 3-1 while possessing superior individual ship capabilities." The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. Fleet Admiral Vex Thrawn, commander of the 3rd Battle Group, finally spoke up. "Grand Admiral, surely they can't all be warships. No species could maintain that large a military force. Many of them must be support vessels, transports, supply ships. Quental shook her head. Our analysis suggests otherwise. Every vessel we've been able to scan carries significant weapon signatures. Even what appear to be their transport ships are more heavily armed than our cruisers. Before the Grand Admiral could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Citadel. The tactical display updated, showing new contacts appearing simultaneously across multiple sectors. "Status report," Thex Moran barked. Communications Officer Zeldar frantically worked at his console. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from 18 different system commanders. Human vessels are taking positions near major Imperial installations, fleet bases, industrial centers, population hubs. They're positioning themselves at all of our critical infrastructure points." The Grand Admiral stared at the display as red markers appeared near every major Imperial facility. The pattern was too precise to be coincidental. The humans had detailed knowledge of Imperial operations and were demonstrating their ability to strike at the heart of their civilization. "Are they demanding anything? Making threats?" "No direct threats, sir. But we did receive this transmission 15 minutes ago." Zeldar activated the main communication system. A new voice filled the briefing room, clearly artificial but somehow more sophisticated than Imperial translation software. The words were precise and emotionless. "Imperial Caltharian Navy. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Colonial Fleet. We request an immediate conference with your highest military authority to discuss terms of coexistence in this region of space. You have 72 hours to respond. Any hostile action against our vessels during this period will be considered an act of war." The transmission ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. "Coexistence?" Admiral Vex Thrawn sputtered. "They're talking about coexistence in our territory?" Grand Admiral Thex Moran raised a hand for silence. His tactical mind was processing the situation rapidly. The humans had appeared seemingly from nowhere, demonstrated superior technology, positioned forces throughout Imperial space, and now were dictating terms. This wasn't a first contact scenario, it was a strategic takeover. "Director Quental, what do we know about this Admiral Chen?" "Very little, sir. The name doesn't appear in any of our databases, ancient or modern, but the fact that they have a unified command structure suggests a highly organized military force. The term colonial fleet implies they may represent an expansion force from their home territory. Meaning they have more ships where these came from? That would be the logical interpretation, yes." Grand Admiral Thex Moran paced to the massive viewing window overlooking the Imperial fleet anchorage. Below, hundreds of Caltharian warships sat in perfect formation, their elegant hulls gleaming in the artificial light. They represented 4 centuries of naval tradition and technological advancement. Looking at them now, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were hopelessly outclassed. "Grand Admiral," called Fleet Operations Director Kyle Moore, "we're receiving reports from the frontier. Admiral Zexathera's battle group has been approached by what appears to be a human diplomatic vessel. They're requesting a preliminary meeting." "A diplomatic vessel?" "Yes, sir. It's different from their warships, smaller, less heavily armed, but still showing the same impossible energy signatures. They've transmitted detailed fleet credentials and expressed a desire for productive dialogue." This gave Thex Moran pause. If the humans were deploying diplomatic vessels, it suggested they genuinely preferred negotiation over conquest. But why position so many warships throughout Imperial space if their intentions were peaceful? "Has Admiral Zexthara responded?" "He's requested instructions, sir. The diplomatic vessel is maintaining a respectful distance, but its escorts include 2 of their largest warships." Thex Moran considered his options. He could order an attack, but based on everything they had observed, it would likely result in devastating losses for the Imperial Navy. He could ignore the diplomatic overture, but that might provoke the very conflict he was trying to avoid. Or he could agree to meet and try to understand what the humans actually wanted. Signal Admiral Zexathara, he decided. He is authorized to meet with human representatives under full diplomatic protocols. Maximum security precautions, but no threatening actions. I want to know what they want. 3 hours later, reports began flowing in from Zexathara's meeting with the human diplomats. What they revealed was both reassuring and terrifying. The human diplomatic team consisted of 3 individuals, Quental read from the transmitted report. They appeared to be physically similar to Caltharians, but with different proportions, taller, less heavily built, but clearly adapted for physical activity. They spoke our language fluently and demonstrated detailed knowledge of imperial history, culture, and military doctrine. How detailed? Thexmoran asked. They knew the names of our past Grand Admirals, understood our tactical preferences, and had accurate information about our current fleet deployments. When Admiral Zexathara asked how they obtained this information, they stated that humanity has been observing the Empire for several decades. The Grand Admiral felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. Decades? How is that possible? Unknown, sir. But it gets more interesting. The human diplomats explained that they represent something called the Earth Colonial Authority, and that they're expanding into this region of space. They claim they have no hostile intentions toward the Empire, but they need access to specific star systems for their own colonies. Which systems? 17 uninhabited systems currently claimed by the Empire, but not actively developed. They're offering what they call fair compensation and proposing shared use of trade routes. Admiral Vex Thran leaned forward. That doesn't sound unreasonable. Why the massive show of force? Quental continued reading. According to the human diplomats, they've encountered other spacefaring civilizations that responded to diplomatic overtures with immediate attack. They position military forces first to ensure they can defend themselves during negotiations. And if we refuse their requests? They didn't make direct threats. But they did mention that the colonial fleet contains over 800 vessels, and that Admiral Chen's force represents only their forward reconnaissance element. The briefing room erupted in shocked murmurs. 800 ships. Even if half of them were support vessels, it meant the humans had a military force nearly 10 times the size of the Imperial Navy. Grand Admiral Thex Moran raised his hands for quiet. Did they provide any demonstration of their technology? Any proof of their capabilities beyond what we've already observed? Actually, yes. When Admiral Zexathara expressed skepticism about human defensive systems, one of the diplomats suggested a practical demonstration. They allowed our most advanced sensor array to scan their diplomatic vessel while they gradually increased their defensive field strength. Results? Sir, at maximum field strength, their diplomatic vessel showed defensive capabilities equivalent to our most heavily shielded battleships, and this was their smallest, least military ship. Thex Moran stared at the tactical display, his 4 hands clasped behind his back. The situation was becoming clearer, but not more comfortable. The humans weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They were colonizers. They wanted territory and resources, but they seemed willing to negotiate for them. The massive military force was insurance, a way of ensuring that negotiations proceeded on their terms. What specific systems are they requesting? The Kepler Nebula region, the outer terminus systems, the empty zones beyond the spiral arm, all regions that we've claimed but never seriously developed due to distance and resource limitations. And what are they offering in return? Advanced medical technology, improved agricultural techniques, and access to what they call quantum communication networks. According to their diplomats, these technologies could increase imperial agricultural output by 40% and eliminate the communication delays that currently hamper our administration of distant territories. The Grand Admiral considered this offer. The territories the humans wanted were barely profitable under current Imperial technology. If the humans could develop them more efficiently, it might benefit both sides. But accepting their demands would mean acknowledging that the Empire was no longer the dominant power in this region of space. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Zeldar, "we're receiving priority transmissions from 12 different system commanders. They're all reporting the same thing. Human vessels are beginning some kind of large-scale operation." "What kind of operation?" "Unknown, but they're moving in coordinated patterns. Our observers report that they're deploying what appear to be massive construction platforms near several star systems." Quental checked her intelligence feeds. "Grand Admiral, if these humans are serious about colonization, those platforms could be the first stage of permanent settlement operations. They're not just visiting our space, they're preparing to stay." The reality of the situation finally hit Thexmoran with full force. The Caltharian Empire was facing its first existential challenge in 4 centuries. A previously unknown species had appeared with superior technology, superior numbers, and detailed intelligence about Imperial operations. They were offering partnership, but the alternative was clearly conflict with a force that outclassed them in every measurable category. "Signal all fleet commanders," he ordered. "Emergency session in 6 hours, and send a message to the Imperial Council. Tell them we need to discuss fundamental changes in Imperial policy." As his staff hurried to carry out orders, the Imperial Council chamber had never hosted a meeting under such dire circumstances. Emperor Drakthul sat upon the throne of stars, his ancient form draped in ceremonial robes that had been worn by rulers for 6 centuries. Around him, the greatest minds of the empire gathered: military leaders, scientists, diplomats, and economic advisors. All eyes focused on the massive holographic display showing the current tactical situation. Human ships now occupied positions near every major Imperial installation across 43 star systems. More disturbing were the reports of massive construction operations beginning in the outer territories. Whatever the humans were building, it was on a scale that dwarfed anything in Imperial history. "Report, Grand Admiral," the Emperor commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Grand Admiral Thexmoran stepped forward, his 4 arms spread in the traditional gesture of respect. "Your Imperial Majesty, we face a situation unlike any in our recorded history. The human force now numbers over 600 confirmed vessels, with more arriving daily. Their technological capabilities exceed our own in virtually every category. Surely our scientists have found some weakness, some vulnerability we can exploit," Chief Science Advisor Morthek answered, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Your Majesty, we've analyzed everything we can observe about human technology. Their ships utilize what appears to be controlled gravitational fields for both propulsion and defense. They can achieve instantaneous acceleration by literally warping space around themselves. Their weapon systems channel exotic matter in ways our physics can barely comprehend." "And their numbers?" "Based on deep space monitoring, we estimate the total human fleet at over 2,000 vessels. What we're seeing here is merely their advance force." A shocked murmur ran through the chamber. Emperor Drakthul's 6 eyes narrowed as he processed this information. 2,000 ships. How is it possible that such a force escaped our notice until now? Intelligence Director Quental stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we've made a disturbing discovery. Analysis of their communication protocols and navigation systems suggests they didn't come from the region of space we originally thought. These humans appear to have traveled from outside our entire galactic arm." "Impossible. No known species has mastered intergalactic travel." "That's what we believed, Your Majesty. But human technology appears to operate on principles we've never encountered. They're not just more advanced than us. They're advancing along completely different technological paths." Before the Emperor could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Communications Officer Velnox rushed into the chamber, his breathing rapid with excitement or fear. "Your Imperial Majesty," he gasped, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the human fleet. Admiral Sarah Chen is requesting direct communication with you. She says it's regarding final terms for a negotiated settlement." Emperor Drakthul considered this. In 4 centuries of rule, no alien leader had ever requested direct communication with the imperial throne. The implications were staggering. The humans considered themselves equals to the Empire. Put her through, he decided. The holographic display shifted, revealing the image of a human female. She appeared younger than Emperor Drakthul had expected, with short, dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her uniform was functional rather than ceremonial, suggesting someone more concerned with practical matters than pageantry. "Emperor Drakthul," Admiral Chen said, her voice carrying through the translator with remarkable clarity. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Colonial Fleet. I appreciate your willingness to communicate directly." "Admiral Chen?" the Emperor replied, noting how easily the human name rolled off his tongue, despite its alien origin. "Your forces have taken significant liberties with Imperial space. Explain your intentions." "Direct and to the point. I appreciate that." Chen smiled, an expression that the Imperial translation software indicated conveyed friendliness rather than aggression. "Let me be equally direct. Humanity requires access to 17 star systems in what you call your outer territories. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation and technological exchange for legitimate claims to these systems." "And if the Empire refuses?" Chen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. "Your Majesty, I hope that won't be necessary. But I should point out that what you're seeing here represents approximately 1/4 of our available military assets. The colonial fleet was designed specifically for situations where negotiation from a position of strength becomes necessary." Grand Admiral Thex Moran stepped forward. "Admiral Chen, your forces have demonstrated impressive capabilities, but you must understand that the Caltharian Empire has defended its territory for 4 centuries. We are not easily intimidated." "Grand Admiral Thex Moran," Chen nodded respectfully, "I've reviewed your service record. 37 successful campaigns, never a single strategic defeat. You're exactly the kind of commander I was hoping to deal with, someone who understands the tactical realities of what we're facing here." "Which are?" "Grand Admiral, your fleet consists of 194 capital ships and approximately 800 smaller vessels, well-trained crews, excellent tactical doctrine, proven battle experience. Under normal circumstances, a formidable force." "Circumstances that are no longer normal?" "I'm afraid not." Chen gestured, and the display split to show additional tactical information. "The colonial fleet's forward element consists of 612 vessels. Our main force, currently in hyperspace, numbers just over 1,800 ships. Our defensive installations in Earth space could deploy an additional 3,000 vessels within 6 months if required." The numbers hit the Imperial Council like a physical blow. Even if the humans were exaggerating their capabilities by 50%, they still outnumbered the Imperial Navy by more than 10 to 1. "However," Chen continued, "we have no interest in conquest. Humanity has learned from our own history that ruling unwilling populations is both expensive and ultimately futile. We want to establish colonies, not manage an empire." Chief Science Advisor Morthek cleared his throat nervously. "Admiral Chen, your technological demonstrations have been impressive. But surely no species could have developed such capabilities without the galactic scientific community becoming aware of the research." Chen's smile returned, but now it seemed somewhat sad. "Advisor Morthek, humanity developed in isolation for over 10,000 years. When we finally achieved faster-than-light travel, we discovered we were not alone in the galaxy. We also discovered that most spacefaring species had developed along remarkably similar technological paths. Antimatter containment, plasma fusion, energy shield technology, very elegant, very efficient solutions to the challenges of space travel. And humanity chose differently. Humanity chose everything. Chen gestured again, and the display showed complex technological schematics. We didn't have the benefit of contact with established galactic civilization. We had to solve every problem from first principles. Some of our solutions proved to be unique. Emperor Drakthul leaned forward on his throne. "Show us!" "Very well." Chen spoke briefly in her own language, and moments later the display showed external views of several human vessels. What happened next would be remembered in Imperial history as the day the universe changed. One of the human battleships, a massive vessel nearly 2 kilometers long, simply disappeared. Not gradually, not with the telltale energy signatures of cloaking devices. It vanished completely from all sensors. "Dimensional phasing," Chen explained calmly. "We discovered that matter can exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, useful for avoiding detection or attack." Before the shocked observers could respond, another human ship demonstrated something even more impossible. It duplicated itself. Suddenly, there were 2 identical vessels occupying the same space, both clearly visible to sensors. "Quantum multiplication," Chen continued. "Under certain conditions, we can cause a single ship to exist in multiple quantum states. The copies are fully functional and can operate independently." Admiral Thexmoran felt his worldview crumbling. "That's impossible. Conservation of mass and energy." "Apply to closed systems, yes," Chen nodded. "But if you can access parallel dimensional frameworks, the rules become much more flexible." Emperor Drakthul found his voice. "How many of these capabilities do you possess?" "Humanity has been very creative over the centuries, Your Majesty. We've had to be. Our home galaxy turned out to be less hospitable than we initially hoped." "Home galaxy?" The implications of this statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. Chief Science Advisor Morthek stammered, You're not from this galaxy?" "Earth exists in what you call the Magellanic Clouds. When we began expanding, we discovered that our galaxy was dominated by a rather aggressive hive mind species that didn't appreciate competition. We were forced to develop military technologies far beyond what would normally be necessary for space exploration." Grand Admiral Thexmoran processed this information with growing horror. "You're saying you fought a galactic war?" "We're saying we won one." Chen's expression became grim. "It took us nearly 3 centuries, but we eventually convinced the hive mind that coexistence was preferable to extinction. Theirs, not ours. And now you're expanding into our galaxy? Humanity requires new living space, new resources, and frankly, new challenges. Your galaxy appears to be more politically diverse, which we consider an advantage. We're hoping to establish productive relationships with multiple species rather than fighting a single unified enemy." Emperor Drakthul felt the weight of cosmic history settling on his shoulders. The Caltharian Empire, which had considered itself the pinnacle of galactic civilization, was being offered junior partnership by a species that had already conquered an entire galaxy. "What exactly are you proposing, Admiral?" "Simple coexistence, Your Majesty. Humanity will establish colonies in the 17 uninhabited systems we've identified. In exchange, we'll share selected technologies that will benefit the Empire economically and scientifically. We'll also provide mutual defense agreements against any external threats." "External threats?" Chen's expression became very serious. "Your Majesty, the galaxy is larger than your current borders. There are other species, other powers that you haven't encountered yet. Some of them are significantly less reasonable than humanity. Having us as allies rather than competitors will serve your long-term interests." Defense Minister Kolvar spoke for the first time. And if we refuse, then humanity will take what we need and move on. Chen's voice remained calm, but the message was clear. We prefer negotiation, but we've learned that sometimes the universe doesn't offer that option. Emperor Drakthul looked around the chamber at his advisors. In their faces, he saw the same realization that had struck him. The age of imperial dominance was over. The humans weren't offering conquest or surrender. They were offering a chance to remain relevant in a universe that had suddenly become much larger and more dangerous. Admiral Chen, he said finally, the Imperial Council will need time to consider your proposal. Of course, Your Majesty, you have 48 hours. After that, our construction schedules require us to begin permanent settlement operations with or without formal agreements. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Finally, Grand Admiral Thex Morin spoke. Your Majesty, we have a choice to make. We can fight a war we cannot win, or we can negotiate an agreement with beings who have already proven they can accomplish the impossible. Emperor Drakthul nodded slowly. Contact Admiral Chen. Inform her that the Caltharian Empire accepts her proposal for negotiations. And, Grand Admiral? Yes, Your Majesty. Begin preparation of our finest diplomatic protocols. If humanity has conquered a galaxy, they've earned the right to be treated as equals. As the council session ended and members began filing out, Chief Science Advisor Morthek remained behind, staring at the tactical display. Your Majesty, he said quietly, I don't think we truly understand what we're dealing with. These humans, they're not just technologically advanced, they're fundamentally different from any species we've encountered. They think differently. They approach problems differently. Partnership with them could change everything we know about science and engineering. Emperor Drakthul remained seated on his throne, considering the implications. Perhaps change is exactly what the Empire needs, old friend. We've grown comfortable, perhaps too comfortable, in our dominance. The humans have reminded us that the universe is much larger and more dangerous than we believed. And much more full of possibilities, Morthek agreed. Outside the palace, the first human construction platforms began their work, reshaping star systems according to plans that incorporated technologies the Empire was only beginning to understand. The galaxy was changing, and for the first time in centuries, the future was genuinely unknown. But as Emperor Drakthul watched the holographic displays showing human ships moving with impossible grace through space itself, he found himself feeling something he hadn't experienced in decades: curiosity about what tomorrow might bring. Ex-Moran remained at the viewing window, staring down at the Imperial fleet. In 6 hours, he would have to explain to the Empire's leadership that their 4-century dominance of this region was over. The humans had changed everything, and the Empire would have to adapt or face extinction. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Caltharian Empire, master of this region of space for centuries, was no longer alone, and based on everything they had seen so far, they were no longer the dominant power either.